their children to have the hot, affordable, and nutritious lunches. Some of them, most of them, can't afford it, but they do want their children to have that. So government leaders are now looking to create a new norm, but a blueprint for school feeding programs is non-existent or unscalable, stunting the prosperity that our children 100% deserve. That is the basis of our conversation this morning as we look to food for education. Alongside myself is the one and only Fellaris, one boy.
Well, good morning. If you are just joining us, remember you could always stream us live. We are on YouTube, we're on X, we're on Facebook. Just search for Capital FM Kenya. And the person that we have in studio with us today is Shalom Ndiku, who's the Director of Public Affairs over at Food for Education. And listen, if you don't know who Food for Education is, I think you need to go onto the internet, foodforeducation.org. And I like what I see on the website here. It says feeding the future. Very passionate about the kids and knowing that kids cannot learn when they are hungry. Now, this entire month, October and November, we've been covering the health and safety of a nation. And we really cannot have that conversation and not include the plight of kids. Kids who are the future of this country and the future of this world. And we need to be able to really understand what are some of the things we need to be paying attention to? And when it comes to matters, health, nutrition is a very, very, very big part of that conversation. So good morning, Mr. Shalom.
Good morning, Flourish. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, amazing. We love it when we have guests at Capital that really are creating the kind of change that we want to see in the world. And maybe to just start things off.
I like the way she's being politically correct. I like to have guests here who are actually doing something. We have a lot of guests, some people who just come here and claim to be doing something, but people who are actually doing something for the society, positive, then yeah, it's good to have you. Interesting name though, Shalom. Where is that coming? Who came up with that, mommy or daddy?
So that was mommy. I was born on a Sunday many years ago, and my parents would go to church on Saturday. And so on Saturday, the title of the sermon my mom heard before she had named this person in her was Shalom. And so she went for it. And that's the name I had, a unique one, but I love it.
Yeah, I love it as well. Shalom actually comes from the Hebrew language. It means peace, but not just peace. It's fully encompassing. You know, the way the Hebrew language says one thing, but it means something deep. It's peace. It's wholeness in terms of your finances, your health, your mental state, your emotional state. It's a complete wholeness where nothing outside you bothers you. Not that nothing outside you is not going wrong, but nothing outside you bothers you. Just somehow you have this complete I'm okay and feeling of contentment and peace and fullness, which is very important because that name and what you're doing today, I think, go hand in hand.
Absolutely. And I think maybe even just to set the stage for this conversation is to understand who Food for Education is. Maybe there's somebody out there who's like, who are these people? Have never heard about them. Who is Food for Education?
So Food for Education is an organization that was created about 13 years ago to solve one thing. Sure that no child goes to class hungry. And a big part of that is trying to ensure that when a child goes to school, yes, they're trying to achieve some educational attainment and objectives, but beyond that, if they're hungry, they can't learn, they can't focus, they can't pay attention. Two, this is such a pivotal moment in a child's development and growth. So if you don't think holistically about their well-being, then we will be doing them a disservice, right? And a big way in which to intervene at that point to ensure that you're building a wholesome individual for the future is by ensuring that they have school meals. Now, in this country, we have about 10 million learners in primary schools, right? Wow. And across the board, just under 3 million of them get school meals. And so there's a big gap that is needed for children across this country to get that. And Food for Education is one of the actors in that space. So we work hard to make sure that every single day, such as today, kids are in school in this country. We're feeding about 600,000 learners every single day. And that's one key thing that Food for Education does. In 2027, we want to be feeding an additional 1 million in this country.
You know, that's such a big gap. 10 million learners. The gap there being only 3 million of them are getting fed. So the balance, which is 7 million, again, there's a gap that needs to be filled. And I like what Chiko read from the website, which is there is no framework,
Yeah.
scalable framework that has been established for even governments to play in this space. Now, we'll get to the policy aspect of what Food for Education is doing, but I want us to look at the correlation between nutritious meals, learning, and productivity in children.
Perfect. So I think that correlation is so key. So at Food for Education, when we provide a meal, right, we're not just providing a meal for the meal's sake. In that, we're also making sure that this meal is nutritious, right? So the meal has the foundational building blocks nutritionally to make sure that this child is getting what they need. And we do rigorous tests and studies to make sure that the rice, the legumes, the vegetables, the porridge that these children are consuming meets their minimum dietary requirements. And bottom line for each of our meals, 100% of that is met every single day. But two, we also want them to be better in that educational environment. So as a result of our meals, we've seen an increase, for example, where a program comes to a school, enrollment shoots up by almost 40%, right?
Wow.
Attendance increases by about 10% for those who are not coming to school, they're now coming. Performance also goes up. But beyond that, school feeding is also linked to the economy, right? At Food for Education, I have over 4,000 colleagues, right? So you're talking about job creation as an employer. We source our produce from local smallholder farmers across the country, and again, creating that market for them to access. So you see, the child is impacted, the community is impacted. Half of our employees that I mentioned are the parents of these children, and that sort of that impact that we see and that connection in terms of
Correct.
productivity.
So it's not just feeding kids, it's lifting up communities, because then again the program is spread out across the country. So we have 47 counties.
Yes.
Food for Education is present in how many counties so far?
So currently we are in 13 counties. We're in 13 counties. We just entered into our 13th county a month ago in Bungoma.
Okay.
But we are in Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, Kajiado, Machakos, Murang'a, Embu, Nyeri, Kiambu, Mombasa. I'm trying to remember, maybe I'm not, Wasingishu, Kakamega.
Yeah.
Yes.
So spread across 13 counties. I mean, it's just phenomenal. I'd never thought about it from the way he's explained it,
Yeah.
which is the community aspect of it. It's not just putting food on a child's plate. It is the trickle-down effect of that. Their parents are getting employment as a consequence of this. Chiko.
There's different angles to this, and one of the things that our team was looking at is what health and learning outcomes you're tracking in terms of, anemia, stunting, BMI, concentration, absenteeism, and grades. And I was looking at it, and I was also thinking about the health angle as well. We can talk about nutrition, and it's good for their bodies and their minds, but in a country, a third world country like Kenya and many other struggling world countries, there's so much more that these kids are facing in terms of health-wise. How does that play a part in what you do?
Yeah, that's important, right? Because our intervention exists within a specific context, right? And when we talk about health, right, we usually think about the typical, yes, this child is sick, or we're making sure that their physical or physiological well-being is tip-top. But beyond that, one thing, you remember the expression, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Such a simple expression. But it's so apt in this moment because we know that if we are providing these children with the meals that they need, you're also addressing a congested health system. You're also addressing, social services that are swamped with high demand. Because by making sure that that child is healthy, that child has the nutrients that they need. So, for example, children in our program actually exceed the amount of iron that they need every day, and iron is so important at that stage. So, by doing that, you're mitigating that need for the parent to take them to hospital. Because maybe their blood is not at the level that it should be, and those indicators don't look good. So for us, school feeding complements that health at the end of the day, and it's something key. We're also big on innovation. and trying as much as possible to make sure that what we're providing these children is actually something that can improve their health in the long run. So experiment with things like kale to add on vitamin K and others. Chiko, I see you have a question.
Yeah, because now that you said you're ensuring, that just makes me curious for you to walk us down that path. And I still want to come back to the 13 counties because there's also challenges that come along with that. I want to know your relationship with the government, how that's working out, and any challenges you guys are facing in ensuring these kids get that food. But let's talk about that. There's a lot of talk, there's discussions, GMO, these foods that I personally do not agree with 100%. I think it's a big mistake, but then again, I don't run the country. I will just try and avoid them. But I have to care about my children who are in school right now. Now, they have food, obviously, but they're less fortunate ones who I still consider my children because we're a village, and that's the African way of thinking. So here we go, Shalom. We're in a situation where food is important, especially for their brain development, their physical development, and their learning, and yet we have to ensure that it's the right food, the nutritious food. So walk me through that journey from the farm to the plate and how you ensure that these children get what their bodies require and need.
Perfect. And thank you for asking that. So the first place we have to source the food is from the farmers, right? So 80% of our food comes from farmers that we vet, that we ensure that are producing food locally that is of a quality, that is approved, that is safe, right? Once we get that food, we then take it to our warehouse. Now at our warehouse, we sort this food so that it can be distributed across the country. Remember, we have about 31 centralized kitchens. So these are large kitchens that cook between 10,000 to 60,000 meals a day. One of the largest kitchens in Africa, the largest green kitchen in Africa, is along Mombasa Road. And we invite anyone from Capital FM to come and check it out. But back to the process. So after the warehouse, the food is distributed to each of these kitchens, right? These kitchens take in their stock. Now, what food are we talking about, right? We're talking about beans, a variety of beans, Nile beans, Wairimu beans, Mutamania. We're talking about various lentil types, green grams, Western dengu that come from Makueni or Busia. We're talking about fresh perishable goods, cabbages, carrots, onions, tomatoes. We provide fruits as well, bananas, and for porridge as well, we provide a mix of maize and millet flour. Once the food gets to the kitchens, it is prepared. Now, upon its preparation, food safety is actually something, Chiko, that we take seriously. In Riro, we have a fully fledged lab. This lab runs our food safety systems. In every food for education kitchen, including about 120 ones in our decentralized model in the rural area. So those large kitchens are mainly in cities like Mombasa, Nairobi, Kisumu. But in places like Murang'a or in Embu or in Molo, we have smaller kitchens in schools. In each of those kitchens, we have to make sure that we're collecting samples of the food we're cooking, right? We keep those samples for 72 hours to make sure, and those samples are traceable to the vessel that food was cooked in. Food does not get served to a child now. Once it leaves the kitchen, it gets on a truck. It is then sent out to a school. It has to be at a certain temperature. If it's below 65 degrees, that food is not served. These kitchens are certified. The largest kitchen is actually what's called a HACCP certified kitchen. That's a high standard by KEBS and even globally recognized. We also collect, we also seal this food, right? So that the person who opens it is the one who serves it. We do tests as well, microbial tests. We do tests on quality, either randomly. The food safety team will just go to a kitchen in Limuru or in Bungoma to ensure that that food is safe. So for us, those are some of the measures we take, and we've been fortunate to date. We've not had any instances where the food quality has actually resulted in something negative.
There's something that I saw coming from India. It must have been something that also Food for Education took note of, which is over 1,000 children fell ill from free school lunches. That's in Indonesia.
Exactly.
Yeah. And there are about 4,700 cases of free school lunches poisoning. So we see how quality control is a very, very big aspect, because the more you decentralize the function of preparing the meals, that there's no one kitchen that is making sure the meals are, kids are feeding from one kitchen. Now you're having to look at what you said. a situation where you'd have to track, say, for example, what's happening in Moranga is going on in Embu, and the risk of kids falling into poisoning is something that has to be taken into account. So far, there's been no incident reported.
No.
Do you know the level of care it takes?
He's talking about fortunate. I don't think it's fortunate. I think it's principles that have been put into place that are paying off.
Yeah.
But at the same time, while I'm appreciating that, there's a big concern that has not been mentioned yet, and we'll come back to it: cost. Because you can't do all that and not suffer from the cost effect. So we'll talk about the cost of the food getting to the plate of the student. We'll talk about the cost that food for education is having to deal with. We'll talk about the sources for your funds, and if there's any way that this can be further supported. Then we can delve also into the relationship with the state, because this is something that affects this citizens of this state just without IDs yet, and that is an absolutely key area. So we'll be right back with the man who is looking at food from a holistic point of view. Shalom. How about that? Prevention is power. This week on Health and Safety of a Nation, join myself, Chiko and Fellaris on Capital in the Morning, June and Martin on The Jam, and Ann Waura on The Fuse for survivor stories, expert tips, and partner initiatives on cancer awareness, early detection, and vaccinations alongside lifestyle diseases.
We asked Kenyan business owners what they want from Old Mutual.
I want insurance and investment solutions that will help my business and my employees to thrive.
Your business growth is our business, so we help you protect and grow your valuable assets. From tailored retirement, medical and insurance solutions to expert-led investment services, we've got your business and your employees covered. Call Old Mutual on 0711 065 100 or visit oldmutual.co.ke today. Old Mutual. Do great things every day.
Capital Sports Update, where sports is taken seriously.
Well, good morning. Kenya's elite amateur John Legirma led a team of 4 golfers at the summit of the day 1 when it comes to the 6th leg of the Sunshine Development Tour East Africa Swing on 2 under par 70 at the Royal Nairobi Golf Club. Now, Legirma was joined by Kenya Rizwan Charania, Njoroge Kibugu, and Uganda's Gaita Tadeo, showcasing class, setting the tone for what promises to be a rather thrilling battle over the course of the next 2 days. Close behind them, though, were 4 players, tied for 5th place on 1 under par 71. That was Mutai Kibugu, Naomi Wafula, yay Naomi, Eric Oko, and Grace Kasongo, each putting up a strong challenge to the title through the opening round. Now, do you know, when it comes to running your errands, probably grabbing a bite, you pay bills online, right? Well, you can do it all with ease. And all you need is just MasterCard, where you tap, scan, swipe your MasterCard. It's fast, it's safe, it's always ready when you are, because life moves quickly and MasterCard helps you keep up. Now, I need you to keep up with me, because today I'm with you here, but come 2026, I will not be here. I am hoping to be at the World Cup, and this is where MasterCard will come into play. I am going to make sure that I have my MasterCard. I can book my flights, my hotel, pay for my experience in the US of A, Canada, and Mexico, because if there's anything that is not going to happen is me missing out on Cape Verde making their maiden appearance at the FIFA World Cup. They become the second smallest nation to reach the World Cup after, of course, beating Islanders, beating Eswatini 3-0 at home. Victory meant that the Blue Sharks secured top spot in their qualifying group and a place at the 2026 finals. Woo! Ahead of continental heavyweights Cameroon. For you to not just show up at the World Cup as a minor small nation, but to beat the indomitable Lions in the process, I need a MasterCard, I need to have money, I need to head to the World Cup, and so do you. Iceland, who had featured already at the 2014 World Cup in Brazil, is the only other country with a smaller population to qualify for a global showpiece, and now we are about to make a statement as Africa. Cape Verde, or Cape Verde, however you pronounce it, they'll be at the World Cup, and so will we. Wrap up with some Arsenal news. The Wonder Kid, who had the world at his feet, now after playing a career ravaged by injuries, Jack Wilshere will be taking his first steps in management as League One side Luton's aged 33 years of age. How about that? 33 years, and Wilshere will be the coach of Luton. It's a full circle moment for that player. He returns to the club where he started as an 8-year-old before moving on to Arsenal a year later at the age of 9. Luton had made a 3-man shortlist for the job. Leyton Orient manager Richie Wellens and former Swansea boss Luke Williams had joined Wilshere on that one, but like everyone else, Luton simply wanted the Arsenal DNA. Go Gunner!
Capital Sports Update. Up to the minute sports, where sports is taken seriously.
Coffee's on, and so is the music. You've found your morning show. Capital in the Morning with Chiko and Fellaris.
I wanna be rich, I wanna be famous, I wanna have lots and lots of money. Soar above the clouds, I wanna be free, like Nelson Mandela. Stand tall like a pyramid, so courageous. No place I'd rather be. Oh na na na, oh na na na. There's no place I'd rather be. Oh na na na. Live and die in Africa. I wanna live and die in Africa. Live and die in Africa. Hey, live and die in Africa. Hey, I wanna feel love. I wanna be remembered. I wanna go down in history. Make my mama proud. The darker the berry, the sweeter the juice. Nasitoke nyumbani, mwacha mila mtumwa. Hey, no place I'd rather go. Ooh, no place I'd rather go. I live and die in Africa. Yeah, I live and die in Africa. Ooh, yeah, I live and die in Africa. Yeah, I live and die in Africa.
So to soul, live and die in Africa, playing right here on Capital in the Morning. Hello, Motherland. Tell me how you're doing. Good way to bring us back to this conversation, because I was listening to Fellaris and Shalom having a discussion, and it'll be interesting for you to stick around, because you'll find out that they plan to spread their wings outside our borders, which is great news. But we'll come to that in just a second. However, we did have a chance to hear how that journey from the farm to the plate is. Just a quick one. We talk about ensuring that it's healthy, ensuring that it's warm. You talked about containers that will keep it at a certain temperature, moving it from one place to where the school is. All this sounds very costly, and ensuring obviously labs are around, and that it is healthy and safe and secure for the children, because that's the main focus. Let's talk numbers, positive or challenges, so we can figure this out. What are we looking at here? Not just for A, the food to get to the students, and then B, operations.
So that's a very, very good point, because obviously to run this operation, resources are required.
Yeah.
And the big way in which we try and ensure we are doing that is by costing these meals, right? So the cost of a meal is about 45 shillings, right? And the way in which we have tried to ensure that our model is sustainable is by bringing three main actors. The first is government to co-invest in this. So we partner with 4 county governments. Each of them contributes to the cost of a meal for learners in their counties to eat, right? So these are the county governments of Nairobi, Mombasa, Murang'a, and Embu. In Murang'a and Embu, we supply porridge for ECD learners. In Mombasa, we provide meals for ECD learners, about 11,000 of them. In Nairobi, we provide meals for primary school learners and ECD learners, over 250,000. Now, government subsidizing the cost of these meals is one way in which to share that burden. The second are parents. Parents contribute. So at times, I told you about 13 counties that we're in, right?
Yeah.
But I've only mentioned 4 that government
Yeah.
contributes, right?
Yeah.
So that leaves 9. In a number of these counties where government might not contribute financially, then we bear that cost with the parents, right? But we try and make sure that that cost is affordable for them, and it's something that they can access, that share of the 45. And it's influenced by different factors. It could be on the cost of the ingredients, it could be on the model of delivery in that part of the country, but it's something that we're always conscious of to make sure that that burden is not imposed on them. And then finally, philanthropists, right? Food for Education is a non-profit, so we work with donors from across the world to support this, but also locally. You talked about corporate partners like Java, Tatu City, and others that also chip in and sponsor schools. And nothing stops you as an individual to be a donor.
Yeah.
Go to our website and donate. If there's a school of yours, for example, where you want to sponsor someone, you're free to do that. So those 3 actors, government, parents, and donors, support that cost of the meal.
Just looking at that, how else can we reduce? Because I'm assuming in some areas the parents are struggling, so adding that cost to them is difficult. Are you looking at other ways, methods of getting more money, sources, resources, so that you can take that burden off them?
Absolutely, right? So school feeding, our school feeding program is only in public schools. Right?
Yeah.
And public schools are under the mandate and jurisdiction of the government, right?
Yeah.
So we want government to increase its funding towards school feeding. One of the pushes we always make, not just at the county level, but also with national government, is that the allocated budget for school feeding goes up. This financial year, that budget is at 3 billion. Historically, it had gone up to about 2 years ago, it had gone up to 5 billion, right? But it dipped after the Gen Z protests. We need that figure to keep going up, right? Not just for the work that we do, but also for the other counties that we talked about, because a bulk of that budget goes to the arid and semi-arid counties, and that's where there is a need. But two, we also have certain donors that support vulnerable learners. So where a food for education program runs in a school, we always map out a portion, around 10% of the most vulnerable learners, and those children eat for free, right? Because a donor comes in to cater to those costs. But I think the big thing we are trying to push for is for government to increase that allocation so that that burden on parents, as you talked about, Chiko, is lessened.
On average, how much are we looking at as the cost per pupil right now in terms of what the parent is absorbing? We did speak of 45 shillings a plate. Is it 10 shillings, 20 shillings a child a head?
So it varies, right? It varies between 15 to 20 shillings.
Okay.
Yeah, depending on various factors.
And I've seen tech rolled out as a way of just helping one keep track of the numbers, because data is key.
Yeah.
in this, in being able to see, are you distributing your meals to the actual count per head in every school? So how has tech and innovation just found its way into supporting what Food for Education is doing?
I think tech has been a big part of our story, and I think the most visible or iconic element of our program is what we call these tap to eat watches. So every child that is in this program wears this wristband, right? And this wristband serves as a sort of an e-wallet one, right? So when that parent is making that contribution, they're able to load it, right? It's registered in their name. They can have various accounts if you have multiple children. It indicates what school this child is registered in. So if you're in Nairobi, where the county government is providing a subsidy of 25 shillings, where a parent only pays 5 shillings, if I load my 50 bob, I know that for 10 school days this month, my child will eat. And those micropayments actually make a difference for a number of parents. So tech has been key in making it possible for parents to be able to contribute. But two, the tech also helps us with data, right? One, it's the efficiency of that meal. So the end of that process that we were talking about earlier, Chiko, is that when the food gets to the school, the seal is broken and it is served. When a child comes, we guarantee that in less than 5 seconds, they're able to get their meal because they line up with their watch, the watch is tapped, it's called tap to eat, and they're able to eat. And that has streamlined that process because remember, lunch break is only 1 hour across the board. So we need to be so efficient because if you're looking at a large school like Olympic in Kibera with 4,000 learners or a smaller school in Tetu in Nyeri County, that lunch hour is the same. So you have to figure out how to do it. But beyond that, we also use technology in our cooking, right? We use methods of clean cooking to make sure that we are efficient with energy and how we use it. We're not harming the environment as well. But we also embed technology into our operations, right? Tap to Eat provides rich data for us to be able to know that why is it in Kamukunji girls in grade 4 are actually not eating on Thursdays, right? We can get that specific data, and we have a full tech team that can help us with that. Or why is there a spike on certain days of the week? Or is it because the exams coming up like now, right? So children are coming to school so that they do that. So we're able to plan for tomorrow and ensure we're saving on food waste, right? One thing we always try and ensure is that we're not wasting food because remember, parents are contributing. This is your taxpayer money. When you pay for parking in Nairobi, some of that money goes to feed children. And we don't want to see a waste. So we have about a 1% food waste ratio. In the food industry, it's about 40%. So those are some of the ways in which tech helps us to plan better.
It's interesting because as you were speaking, two thoughts came to my mind. So first and foremost, we'll come to the second one, which is terms of numbers and the spiking of the numbers going up and down, because I saw a certain statistic that I want to pick your brain on. But before that, I was going to ask, and I'm wondering if you've answered it in the tech, whether this tech is going to guide you, because while you said arid and semi-arid counties, we have children with disabilities, girls who are adolescent, they require something totally different. You have places where informal settlements where reaching these kids must be hell on earth. How do you deal with that?
So that's a very good question. Now, the data that we collect provides some of that information, right? So we'll know the child's age. So you talk about, for example, adolescent girls, right?
Yes.
In a secondary school where we have our program, we'll be able to know that, this is a girl, this is her age, this is the class that she's in, right? So that as we look at the data over the weeks, over the terms, we're able to tailor any interventions on the same. Now, for example, we have a full impact team that does research actively, right? They're looking at, for example, if we say we want to look at the impact of the program on adolescent girls, we can actually segment that group because of the tech and map them out. If we want them to be in certain counties, we can map them out to be able to ensure that this is the group we're looking at, this is the impact we want to have on them. Or we've seen that, for example, the portions of this vitamin are not sufficient for them. So we need to do research to see if that's something we can increase without impacting costs. And I think that's one of the advantages that tech provides for us. But in some of these other areas you've talked about, fortunately within this country, accessibility in terms of, mobile penetration is quite high. But for tap to eat, you don't need data. It's just a USSD code, right? So parents are able to, access it no matter where they are, even if the connectivity is low. But I think connectivity has increased. In terms of children with special needs, I think we're also usually very sensitive to data protection. We're dealing with a very vulnerable population. So I think it's something we can explore with our legal team to see how to do that. But special need learners are usually, I talked about those vulnerable learners that we usually map. They're usually grouped in that category to make sure that they're getting meals also free of charge.
Before I get to my second part of that question, in terms of the numbers and the spikes of fluctuation in terms of the numbers, I do have a message here from Chiko and Ndiku, who is actually currently typing as well. Says, good morning. Thank you for having this conversation today. Food for Education has changed the feeding system in public schools. My daughter benefits from the same program, but majority of the kids complain of tummy aches because of the food is not prepared properly. Mine used to always have tummy aches, and I decided to pack stew for her from home. She only takes rice, and as far as we haven't had any stomach issues. And then she goes on to say that was an isolated cases, but that has suddenly leveled out. So there's some feedback from a listener right here on Capital FM. Statistic I was talking about. 150 million students, children, go to school from struggling countries hungry. That number, surprisingly, went down after the COVID-19 pandemic. And I found that very interesting. And I know it's not fair to ask this question, but I'm wondering if you would have any inclination as to why, because I tried to read and find out just the spike. And I was wondering, what are you seeing in Kenya?
That's very interesting. So the number went down after COVID.
Yeah, I can make head or tails about that as well.
That's quite interesting. I don't know if. No, I mean, I think that's,
so you're
that's
just
but
some homework for you, Shalom.
Some homework for me, but
yeah.
It's interesting
for
you say
sake.
that. It's interesting, teacher Chiko, I'll do that homework, sir. But from where I sit, looking at the continent, right? Because Kenya is our country and we love it, but as Food for Education, we're looking beyond our borders, because we've seen that on this continent, the penetration of school feeding programs across all 54 countries is at about 13 to 16%, and it shows there's a need. As we've grown, we've been approached by so many actors, including governments, telling us, look, we see what you're doing in Kenya. Come help us do it in our country. Now, why this is important for us is because when we talk about this generation of children that we're feeding, right, we have a youth bulge in this continent. We have the most youthful population on this continent. By 2050, 1 in 4 human beings will be African. Right? 1 in 4 human beings will be African. So what is that gray matter infrastructure in their brains that we're building? And how are we setting them up to succeed? Because if we don't get that right now, we're not doing them justice. And when you talk about those big figures, our workforce, I think, as a continent will be about 750 million, the largest continent offering people to the world. We're not there yet. So when we are feeding that girl in a school in Korogocho, we don't have to limit her to that world. She might be a pilot for Qatar Airways or Emirates or whatever, SpaceX plane is going somewhere to Mars as an African. And I think for us, that's a big part of what we're trying to build. So currently, we've been approached by the government of Zambia, where we're starting to partner with them and share some of these lessons with them. And we're looking at other countries to partner with. The African Development Bank has created a fund with one of our donors dedicated to school feeding. And that's that largest scale for the continent we're looking to make a difference in.
I'm very curious about resilience, given that it's all fun and games until very unpredictable things happen. Could be Mother Nature choosing to do her thing, could be fluctuations in terms of economic fluctuations. You did mention COVID-19 and what that challenge presented for Food for Education. I would want to understand maybe what solid structures have been put to absorb that, so that way it's not affecting the kids and it's also not affecting the parents, given that they're very vulnerable. And if someone is only able to afford 5 shillings and tomorrow something changes, it doesn't automatically mean that they're going to be able to even top up with an extra 5 shillings. So how is food for education modeled to be able to think about future kind of situations?
Yeah, and that's an amazing question. You know, you talk about COVID, for example. You know, when COVID happened, we were impacted because schools were shut down, and we had to pivot and think, right, and even sort of take a humanitarian mindset to make sure that some of these learners still get meals. Last year, before the second term commenced, there were big floods in April as the holidays were ending and schools were closed, but we had cooked, the food was ready, and so we asked ourselves, okay, what is the biggest need now? People are, not in their homes, their houses are flooded, and so we had to distribute food to people, especially in informal settlements in Nairobi. And so, those are just examples of exceptional circumstances. But you talked about structures or more institutional thinking.
Yeah.
I think one example is when it comes to how we purchase, particularly non-perishable goods, right? We have to be creative because, yes, we're trying to address the impacts of the shock, but we're also trying to make sure that that cost per meal doesn't go up for those vulnerable learners and their parents, who for them, this is a big investment that they're making. So, for example, when we procure beans, right, we make sure that we buy in bulk when the prices are low. Right, when the market is saturated with supply, so that when there are swings or cycles in supply or even in price, we know we have that reserve, and that makes sure that the burden of cost doesn't go to the parent. But when you think about resilience across the board, it is something that we are consistently thinking about. I talked about our centralized kitchens, right? Our centralized kitchens cook 10 to 60,000 meals. When those meals are prepared, they're put in a truck, and a truck can have 10,000 meals, as compared to putting them on multiple cars and distributing them. Those emissions, giving farmers a guaranteed market, right? As we've continued to grow, last year this time I think we're feeding maybe 300,000 learners, and now we're at 600,000. So we're growing that market, so that if I'm a farmer somewhere and I'm planting my ndengu somewhere in Makueni County, for example, I know that this market is growing and it's going to be reliable for me, right? So there's that resilience that is being created economically by creating that market. So there are other examples, but it's something that we are consciously thinking about.
It's something you can easily plan for with the dry foods. I'm just wondering, fruits and greens, that you bear the cost.
So I think that's a fair question, right? So for those, I think there are parts of the country where you can reliably get them a majority of the year.
Yeah, correct.
Right? And if there are slight increases, we'll bear that cost.
Noble.
Usually they're marginal.
Quite noble of you. All right. On that noble note, how about we wrap this one up by asking you, because you have so many shareholders in this one, national government, county government, you have the listener, you have companies who are chipping in, you have the parents. What would you be your 3 asks?
Good. So I think the first ask let's start with national government. I think national government should increase its allocation of financing towards school feeding. As I mentioned, this figure has dropped from almost 5 billion to 3 billion in the last year. And the need is still there, right? We talked about that gap to get to the 10 million. Especially in vulnerable areas. So creating a ring-fenced, fund or budget for school feeding is something that we want them to do. And we've been engaging with the Ministry of Education to do that and improving our understanding on public finance management. For county governments, so in August in Homa Bay during the Devolution Conference, the Deputy President launched a model school feeding policy that we had partnered with the Council of Governors to develop. County governments, at times, note that we don't have the frameworks to be able to do this. This policy touches on these elements we've talked about, including financing, including operations. So really using that as a tool to establish frameworks of school feeding. And then for ordinary Kenyans, I think, you can do something towards school feeding, right? If there's a school nearby you, if there is, a cause you have, if you're working in a company and that company wants to do something, go to our website, sponsor a learner, sponsor a school, and make a difference for your community, but more importantly for the future of this nation and the continent. Thank you so much.
Wise words from Shalom Ndiku, who happens to be the Director of Public Affairs at Food for Education, calling not just on the parents and companies and listeners, but also the county government and ultimately the national government. We have the money for Nyota Fund. We might as well increase the fund for education. That's me, not him. He put it in a more politically correct way. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for the noble thing that you guys are doing, and we hope that the support keeps going, and we do encourage you to continue in spite of the challenges that you'll face here and there.
No, thank you. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for giving us this platform. I'm a big fan of Capital FM, so I'm happy to come and speak to our message here. Thank you so much.
I'm a bigger fan of Food for Education, and I'm a big fan of Ndiku. And I guess this is the place where we say Shalom.
Aga Khan University Hospital, world-class care here and now. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. But at Aga Khan University Hospital, we're thinking beyond breast cancer. Get screened today for breast, cervical, prostate, or colorectal cancer because early detection saves lives.